Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second session of Fabulous Fascia. Very happy to have again Bob Dubb to lead us. Bob led us on June the 4th, and we felt we didn't quite finish it on June the 4th. We had such wonderful observations, wonderful insights. We just felt that we needed a little bit more work on this. So Bob, again, graciously was willing to do this. So we're very happy to begin, probably with a brief review, and then any other observations from Bob. And then, of course, I welcome all of you to share what you feel is important for you. So Bob, welcome aboard. Great to have you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, it sure is a pleasure to be here again. I did want to give Sharon an opportunity to introduce her friend.
Okay, thank you. This is Janet, and she's a massage therapist and very interested and has worked with fascia.
Okay.
Welcome, Janet. Good to have you, dear. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And it looks like we have a couple of others that are joining us too. So Nancy Lee, Lori, and Karma Pose. I'm not sure who that is. So anyway, so we just presume it's someone pretty well interested, and there'll be, I'm sure, others joining us as well. Thank you again, Bob. Go ahead, please.
Okay. And I did want to mention, I have talked about Sharon Madison's book, Spirit Speaks, a number of times with this group. So there she is in person. Okay, I was going to begin, I will begin using the Bonnie Kreutzer definition from the Daily Om, because I think it was so concise and to the point, but comprehensive. But I'm going to interrupt it in the middle. So here goes. The simplest definition is that fascia is the connective tissue that connects all other tissues. Fascia is the webbing of the body. We've been taught muscles and bones hold us up. Actually, if it wasn't for the fascia's webbing causing compression, suspension, and tension, our parts would slosh to the floor. Fascia is the body's scaffolding, a matrix of hydrated, semi-crystalline collagen fibers in varying tensile strengths and interweaving patterns that wrap around our organs, bones, tendons, ligaments, brain matter, etc. Fascia takes on the form of whatever it's wrapping, while maintaining separation and creating continuous connectivity throughout the body. I'm going to interrupt this definition because there's another paragraph to it to introduce you to something related that I just ran into yesterday. I was reading this particular book. It's called.
Bob, I don't think we can see it. Could you give the title again?
I'm going to
please?
read the title to you.
Thank you.
It's Activate Your Superhuman Potential, the Ultimate 5D Toolkit. And it's by Jerry Sargent. Okay, what I was reading this morning was that mesentery, also known as the mesocolon, is an organ in the body, but it wasn't labeled as an organ until 2012. And it attaches the intestines to the posterior abdominal wall and is formed by the double fold of peritoneum. It helps in storing fat and allowing blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves to supply the intestines, among other functions. Its existence has been known for thousands of years, but only recently was actually labeled as an organ. Karl Tolt, an Austrian professor of anatomy, published his account of the human mesentery in 1879. He identified the fascial plane between and I've got to get this right.
It's time. Take your time.
Yeah. Anyway, it's between the colon and the underlying retroperitoneum, which became known as Tolt's fascia. So that was back in 1879. So why is this relevant? Well, as it was saying in this book, because when we get a gut feeling, what we call our gut feeling, what it really is it's due to our mesentery communicating with our brain. And our gut has been called our second brain. It's my belief that the communication from our gut to our brain happens through Tolt's fascia. So,
Bob, could you spell that word mesentery?
sure. MESENTERY.
Maybe one more time, please.
MESENTERY.
Thank you, Bob.
It's also known as the mesocolon. Meso meaning in the middle of or in between. All right, so that's my interruption of the definition. So continuing with Bonning-Kreuzer's definition, recent research has shown that all past traumas, both physical and mental, are stored within the fascia, causing its natural form to be disrupted and hardened, holding the body in a distressed state. And with repetitive movements and trauma, the density and mass of the fascia can impair movement, circulation, and the flow of lymph throughout the body. So when we feel a knot in any muscle, it's actually a buildup of fluid, toxins, adhesions, and scar tissue within the fascia that's unable to move within the lymphatic system of the body. Fascia is a huge deal, even though it was discarded by classical autonomists for centuries as if it were packing material. Clinicians, acupuncturists, and body workers have known for a long time that impacting the fascia can impact our health in a major way because it is the great connector, and now science is looking at it in detail. Okay. Now, during the Q&A session at last month's fascia presentation on June 4th, Vince recommended Bonning-Kreuzer's course on fascia. The name of that course is Fascia Flows to Free Your Body. I expect that there will be discussion about that workshop after we go through this summary and we talk about what I discussed a month ago. So stay tuned for that. Now, I'm not going to repeat everything from that last presentation. I'm just going to hit the highlights as a review to provide reference points for tonight's discussion. And then I will moderate that discussion as been requested at our last meeting. You might recall that I began the last session with a story about events that led up to the Northeast Reiki retreat in the Adirondacks at Crystal Bay. And that was where Lynn Alms and I attended a pre-conference workshop presented by Sharon Madison, right there on your screen. The purpose of including that story was to provide you with some context of my own energetic state of mind, body, and spirit as I was getting ready to glean the information on the Fascia presentation. Now, that story included a visit from Jesus, my first and only, while in a theta state. His visit followed a realization and an acceptance of an offering of love and energy from someone who had previously been on my podcast. His message was twofold. You don't know how much power you have, which was followed by an infusion of a jolt of energy into my body. And the meaning of communication for me was to accept his energy and to pass on that energy of love. So that was the reason why I included that story at the beginning of my presentation last time.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. So the subsequent pre-conference workshop presented by Sharon not only demonstrated the power of love energy that is strong in her as she delivered the information on chakras, but it also provided an added bonus because a participant in that session introduced us to the benefits of tuning fork therapy. And that takes advantage of the fascia network for healing purposes. So I've since added that to my Reiki practice. Sharon's conference opening presentation on distance healing was the perfect lead-in to the fascia presentation by Sarah Saltro, because I firmly believe that it is our fascia that makes distance healing possible, as our fascia provides us with the communication receptors and transmitters necessary for all of that to work. So that's my personal belief. So with that, I will give a little summary of Sarah Saltro's presentation. I'm not going to go into it too much in depth because we did that in the last session. But basically, she talked about the piezoelectric qualities of fascia and what that means. And I discussed the definition of that at the last session, that we are like quartz and other crystals. The fascia is like an electronic network of receptors and transmitters within the body. And the vibrations of our cells that are traveling through that fascia is at the speed of sound. And last time I discussed the difference between the speed of sound and the average speed of how our nervous system works. So our fascia qualifies as a liquid crystal. So it can be tuned to frequencies or just harmonized within itself. And that was a quote from Tom Myers, who's one of the scientists that she quoted in her talk. So as mentioned in the definition of fascia, it holds our bodies together, but it also holds patterns in the body. And these patterns are developed from our habits. So the things that we do every day with our bodies are stored within the fascia. But trauma is also stored within that fascia. And, one thing that she brought up, and I mentioned this last time, is that first trauma that you have is when the doctor pulls you out of the womb and spanks you on the butt. And that trauma is actually there within your fascia. So the idea is, if you want your fascia system to work to its maximum potential, you've got to release those traumas that are held within it. All right, and then I talked about how it's sensitive to both touch and pressure, as well as being sensitive to heat. And that, when we look at piezoelectricity, what we're looking at is an electric charge that accumulates in certain materials, including in your fascia. And that's pretty much what she talked about. I did want to say that I also gave you a story at the end of the presentation, and it was the material that Sharon Madison was able to provide for me from the collective. And the message that the main message that I wanted to have the group understand from that reading was that our body is a marvelous machine, and that there's so much going on with our bodies that we're never going to understand all of it. In fact, I was given the analogy like trying to understand oneness. We'll never understand all there is to oneness, but it's worth the effort to try. So there's just a lot going on with this marvelous machine, and we should take really good care of it to get the most out of it. So I think that's about all that I wanted to summarize from the last presentation. I did mention some YouTube videos that were available. I don't think I need to repeat that. That last presentation is still available on YouTube. So feel free to tune into it if you want to see that detail. Unless, Vince, there was something else you wanted me to include in the summary, I think we can move on to questions and discussion. I guess my first question is that Vince laid out the homework, the challenge for people to connect with that workshop that Bonnie did. Even said it was pretty cheap. It was like $15. So I was wondering if anybody in the group from the last session did tune into that workshop, and if you could share some of the things that you learned.
Did anyone do it? That's we can make you co-host, or we can do it. I can make you a co-host if you would like, or would you like me to call on the people? Or can you see everyone, Bob?
I see 4, 16, 18 screens.
Yeah, there are 18 of us right now, because you can see everyone. Well, I'll mention myself personally. When I saw the De Leon and Bonnie's workshop, I was very moved by it. I believe you read the presentation she made on the De Leon when you defined fascia itself, and I thought she was extremely knowledgeable. Since that time, actually at the workshop, there are 10 sessions, and you can take them whenever you want to take them. So I found that to be quite helpful. And I've only done the first one since that time. And since I did the first one, she talked about where we store a lot of that debris in our fascia. And she talked particularly about the thighs, up your thighs, as well as your shoulders and your chest. So what I did personally was to look at the exercises. There were around 4 or 5 that she presented. And like anything, when you're a rookie at doing these things, it's like when people did the energization exercises of Paramahansa Yogananda, I can go through them very quickly, but it took me about 4 months to really get them down. So I thought she went through them. She knew them obviously quite well. A rookie like myself, I was pausing. So essentially what I did was I found one exercise from the first session, and that's all that I've done. But I do that exercise every day. And it's kind of a downward dog type exercise. And it really stretches your shoulders, really gives you a huge stretch in your shoulders. And I really, really have enjoyed that. So giving you my observation, I've just done the first session. I'm motivated to do more, but I integrated it into part of my energization exercises, which I dearly love. But the other thing that I found very interesting, for whatever reason, when I would go to the gym, I would like to do the stepper, and the stepper would wear me out. It's kind of going up and trying to keep marching, going up and down, and it would just kind of poop me out, quite frankly. But nevertheless, I would just kind of go on a regular basis. And I just thought to myself, I just decided over the past 10 months to resume what I would just call squats or knee bends. And if you haven't done knee bends for a while or squats, it'd be pretty interesting to see how many you can do without So I started out by doing 10, and then 15, and I'll do around 15 to 20 every day as part of my morning routine. I found that to be very helpful. The point I'm getting at is that what I have found is that Bonnie's exercise of stretching, particularly with the shoulders, which was really good for me, and then the squats, which are really with my thighs, those were the 2 of the main places where she felt we needed to have a stretch. So those are the things that I personally have done. I do them every day. I love doing both of them, in addition to the energization exercises of Paramahansa Yogananda. So that's my fessing up, Bob, of what I have done and what I do. Did anyone else check the website out? And if so, what would you like to share? Did anyone do it? Laura, you did?
Well, I missed last week. What's the website address?
Yeah, the website is, if you just go to Bonnie Krotzer, Krotzer, Bonnie Krotzer.
Okay.
And the presentation that she has, it's called Fascia Flows to Free Your Body. fascia flows to free your body. It's really well presented. And she has 10 videos. Again, I just did the first one, but she seems very much in tune, and that's what I did.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who did anything that you'd like to describe?
Could you repeat her name, please?
Sure. Bonnie Krotzer, Krotzer. Bonnie Krotzer, Krotzer. And it's entitled Fascia Flows to Free Your Body.
Thank you.
That's Bonnie with a B, right?
I'm sorry?
That's Bonnie with a B, as in boy, right?
Yeah, Bonnie is in boy. Bonnie Krotzer.
Hey, Judy.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Judy.
Oh, yes. I've been doing something with fascia for the last, probably 8 years. And it's an exercise using roller. And the theory, this is called the MELT theory, MELT. And the idea is that the fascia is, as we age, it begins to dry out like a sponge. And so there are exercises to stimulate it so that it retains the quality that it should have. And so it really helped me. I was in a great deal of pain and learned about this and started to do it. So it's rolling on a roller, and I do it on my legs and my thighs and my back, my hands, my feet, and it really has helped me a great deal. I think, though, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Bob.
Yeah, Judy, as I recall, at the last session, you mentioned you had barely been able to walk for 2 years.
Yeah,
So was this prescribed by somebody?
Well, when I had this problem, I tried everything. So I did a lot of research. Anything was suggested or I read about, I tried. And I found this, a friend of mine in New York told me about it. This person in New York who has started this, she's a physical therapist and really has a wide circle of followers now and other people who teach it. And so that's really how it came about. But I came to believe that there's, the fascia is a very important part of our body. And it needs to be hydrated. And so not only, keeping yourself hydrated, but doing this rolling on it helps to hydrate the fascia.
Hey, thank you for that.
You're welcome. But you have not, you have not heard of that before.
It was mentioned in our program last time, as a matter of fact, the MELT.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it was mentioned last time, and but thank you for giving additional material on that. Thank you.
Sure.
John Hoops.
Thank you, Bob. I have learned so much since our last meeting because I too have, looked up a lot of things. But I must say, I wish I had invited my massage therapist and my seriously, and my physical therapist. It never dawned on me that how interesting this would be to them. But this is recorded. so I can have, give them the website. I think it's terrific that we have a massage therapist here too. And I must say, the stretching, I have gotten back into much more than I did. This made so much sense to me. Vince, you talked about the shoulders and the downward dog and some things you've added. Well, I too have added, I've done yoga for years and years and years, but I slipped a little away from it. And I had some trauma about 10 years ago from a fall on my back. And so it's resurfaced. So I find dry needling to be very helpful. And a regular massage, not just a massage, but I go once or twice a month, and she can feel the difference in my body from the regular massage practice. And so I'd be curious to hear some comments from the massage therapist about, feeling the difference from your hands, from someone's maybe fascia that's starting to release or change. Maybe we could do that right now. I'm not sure of your name.
Janet.
Janet, yes.
Okay, Janet, if you would comment, and then Renee, and then Lois.
Sure. Yeah. Fascia has this really interesting quality that Judy was talking about.
Excuse me, Janet, could you speak a little closer to your device?
Sure. Fascia has an interesting aspect to it that Judy was talking about. It has the ability, it's called the ground substance. It's made up of collagen and elastin, which are the protein layers. And then there's what's called a ground substance that has the ability to go from a gel-like consistency to a liquid. And the way that happens is a response to pressure, light pressure, and it can not necessarily revert back to the gel substance when it has become liquefied. If you maintain your mobility, you continue to stretch, you continue to do your yoga. But as you age, then it's harder and harder for it to become more liquid-like and flexible. What I feel as a massage therapist when I work with fascia, I can feel as I begin to work with it, it begins to heat up. And that's mostly from just light pressure from my hand or from my arm. I don't have to work deeply to achieve that. And fascia doesn't really stretch. People used to think that it stretched, but it doesn't really stretch. It just loosens. And there's a feeling of sinking into the tissue. And light pressure is really all that it takes. Used to be, massage therapists used to think that you had to go really deep to affect change, but that's not true. I can just lay my hands lightly on somebody and breathe, and the change begins to happen. So it's what you're experiencing, that your massage therapist can feel the difference, or your PT can feel the difference, is a reality. It does change the tissue, and it changes the texture and the feeling of the muscles. And fascia is not only surface. It since it wraps around every organ and bone and tissue in the body, actually the muscles and the bones are not necessarily wrapped in fascia, but they're also embedded in it. I've just been learning that it's not just a wrapping around these things, but it actually permeates and embeds the tissues and the organs and the muscles. So that's kind of an interesting aspect. We never really knew about that before. And it used to be when
Excuse me,
people,
Janet, could you speak it again up a little bit more? Well, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you, and I'm not sure if others are or not. So just a little louder if you could, please. Thank you.
sure, I was just going to add that when scientists and PTs and whoever was doing anatomy on cadavers, and they were studying anatomy, they used to discard the fascia. They just would like thinking of it as packing material, and they would discard it and just get rid of it. And now they're kind of wising up and thinking, oh, maybe we should take a closer look at this. So,
Can
yeah,
I ask you a question, Janet? And then I'll
sure.
turn off here. When I was talking about the foam roller, Judy, I foam roll quite a bit too, but my PT has suggested I've been doing it incorrectly. And so I thought I would just share this, is what he has me doing is rolling very slowly. And when I find that trigger spot, I stay there for 30 seconds or so and let that pressure, into that spot, and it kind of melts or relaxes that. Is that something that you would agree with, or not agree, but could you comment on that, holding the pressure as you roll?
Yes, I would definitely say that would be effective. That's what I do in my work when I'm working just with my hands. I will just put my hand on an area that's tight or bound up and leave it there until I can feel the tissue begin to melt. I don't know that you need to, maybe your PT is thinking that you're putting too much pressure on it.
Probably. I have a tend to overdo things. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what the issue is about how you're doing it wrong, but
Well, I think what I was doing was just pretty fast, and it wasn't having much benefit.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
rolling.
Yeah, you want it's patient. It takes a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
Renee?
There we go. Can you hear me? I really did appreciate your comments, Janet. I think, Fascia, I agree. It can be, I do Traeger movement therapy, and it's very light rocking motions, and it's meant to reach deeply into the body, but through a light touch. But through a class I was taking by a PT, the fascia has like you said, the fibrils in it, and it's around with the fluid. And if we don't move, she showed pictures how the fibers are all in disarray. They don't seem to have a common form, but through gentle, rhythmic, maybe repetitive movements, the fibers actually straighten out. They more, not straighten, but they form more, I don't know how to put it, uniform forms. And there is, I don't know if you mentioned about a YouTube, there was a French scientist who did an experiment where he put a little camera into someone's, under their skin, and it's called Strolling Under the Skin. That's the name of the YouTube. And you can actually see the fascia moving and flowing, the liquid and the solid. It's a short video. I forget the French scientist's name. Could look it up. But you can.
Yeah, I did mention that at the last session.
But Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, movement seems to be the key to keeping the fascia fluid, more fluid and less stuck. And yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you for letting me just. Thank you, Janet.
Sure.
Lois, you had a comment?
Where's Lois?
You're unmuted, Lois. If you have a comment that Bob asked you for, you're unmuted.
But you froze.
Looks like it.
I don't know what's going on, but suddenly I'm getting nothing. Can anybody hear?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, well, I couldn't hear either. Is it my turn yet or what's happening?
Yes, you're up.
Yes, it's ready. Okay. Well, I'm really impressed to hear all of these words from a massage therapist, and that the medical profession is now recognizing this. A friend of mine had some dry needling for some plantar fasciitis that he had, and that's the first I heard of it, and that was less than a year ago. Heard of dry needling, that is. And I think it's rather like trigger point myotherapy. I had great success in my massage business doing trigger point myotherapy. Many things in my body personally have been healed by it, but also I used it on my clients. And the book is called Bonnie Pruden. Well, it's old, so Bonnie Pruden wrote it, and now I forget the title of it exactly, but something about myotherapy, and she worked on JFK when he was president, so that's how old this is. And this work is absolutely wonderful, and it does take patience. It takes gentle pressure on the right spot, finding the trigger point. I've healed in my massage therapy business, particularly a dentist, but many people, a dentist who had terrible problems with his right arm because of the position you need to work in when you're a dentist, repeatedly the same position. And through working with this, 30 years ago, we healed his hand, his arm, so that he could continue to practice dentistry until he retired from it, rather than not being able to do it and having to find another livelihood. So just so glad to hear all this information is now recognized and people know it. Isn't it wonderful?
Would you back up a minute, Lois, and give us the name of that author again?
Her name is Bonnie Pruden, Prudden. Here we have Bonnie Krotzer, but this is Bonnie Pruden. And I could go upstairs and get the book if you really want to know the title. It's old. She wrote several of them. It's something about myotherapy, and it's got all kinds of pictures in it and where these trigger points are and everything. And I think they were called knots in the muscle. But you know, since we've been studying this fascia, I think these knots are in the fascia really, as much as, if not more than, in the muscle, which is what was believed when I was learning this. I learned it from Tasso Spanos. He's a local Pittsburgher. He is now deceased within the past 3 years during COVID, but he taught it to me. We went to clubs. We went to, not clubs, what do you call those things at a convention center where you have all the people come and have their tables, and I can't think of the word. My brain isn't working, but he used to walk around and talk to people and set up his table in the closet and do this trigger point myotherapy. And it was dramatic how these people's problem, whatever it was, muscle problem, was released with this myotherapy stuff that we did. And Tasso owned Opus One, which you may know him from that. It was a business here in Pittsburgh, and I think it was with something of furniture or foreign, I don't know. But he was also this trigger point myotherapist, and it was dramatic, the results. And I am just so blessed to have found that early in my career. And this is why I call myself a healer and how much success I have. And Bob is describing why, and I'm just so happy.
Okay, thank you for that, Lois. Tim and or Karen, and then John Hoops.
This is wonderful. We just listened to your first talk, Bob, yesterday. We were away on vacation, and when we came, we wanted to make sure we listened to it close to when today's presentation, so it would be fresh. And we were just so impressed. So I thank you so much. Now, I wanted to show you this thing here. I think you can see it. It's called a therapy blade. It's thin. You can see that it's, you know, just as thin as can be. And I got it from my physical therapist when I was having severe neck and shoulder issues. And it is for loosening fascia, and you rub it on, you know, the area. And then when you find a spot, you real slowly work on that area. And I'll use it off and on, you know, if a hand is hurting or something, to loosen. But what's interesting is I've been struggling with this plantar fasciitis or heel problem, and I got it out and decided I was going to rub around it. And I did, but I noticed that I was tender up my legs. And so I continued with it the whole way up my legs, and it released the pain in the foot, you know, by working this blade. And I do believe I was loosening fascia that was tight the whole way up the leg that was affecting the foot. But I find this all very fascinating. And the mesentery that you talked of being an organ, that's very interesting. My mother actually, instead of having ischemia in her arteries of her heart, she ended up with mesenteric ischemia. And it was that's what caused her death. That eventually that she just could not digest her food and eat well. And it was the mesentery, and it's very rare condition, but it was in the mesentery.
Oh.
Yes, that just, it just made me, you know, think about her and her life, and here she was blocked up in that area. Interesting.
Well,
So-
it just makes me think of what Vince is always saying, that all of us are smarter than just one of us. And we learn so much from each other. This is terrific. Okay, John Hoops, and then back to Judy E.
I just want to say briefly to Lois, I have that book too, Lois. I've had it for years. It always amazed me, all the magic mark lines that they show on the person's body. But what I really want to say, Lois, I have learned, I just didn't know all of that about your history. And your passion just oozed out, and you said how happy you were. That just made all of us happy too. And I'll share with you, Lois, I just looked up Bonnie Pruden. She passed away in 2011 at 97 years old. So I think she knows what she's talking about. Yeah. And I agree, this is a terrific evening. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lois.
I didn't know that, but here's the book. Can you
Okay,
see it?
yep.
Bonnie Pruden's Complete Guide to Pain-Free Living is the title of this book. It's a very tattered and old copy because I've used it well.
Okay. Thank you for that, Lois. Okay, Judy. You're on mute, Judy.
Okay.
You-
Well, Sharon, I find what you said so interesting about the massage. And I think that the kind of work that I've been doing with Melt is like a self-massage. And John, the kind of roller that's used is a softer roller than the typical one. And it is so easy to do. I have done dry needling, and also acupuncture. I really tried everything that was possible. And this melt is so simple, and it is just rolling on this roller on different parts of the body. And I've gone from not being able to walk to being able to paddleboard now and bike 20 miles. And it's been an incredible thing. And it's astounding. So it's fun to talk to all of you about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, Jacqueline.
There's Lori Moss too, Bob. Maybe you didn't see
Oh.
Lori's hand.
Okay.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for all this information. I was wondering whether adhesions have anything to do with fascia.
Okay.
I had a lot of adhesions after abdominal surgery, and I had some massage to tear them apart. And I don't know whether the fascia is made of the same material as adhesions. And do you have any knowledge about that?
Well, I think Janet might. Janet?
Yeah, and adhesions definitely are a part of the fascial makeup. And it sounds like you have scar tissue where the fascia tends to lay down fibers in any which way they can to try to close up or surround where the incision or the injury was. And the massage therapist would try to, by light pressure, maybe moving a little bit deeper, try to straighten out those fibers so that they were more aligned. And working with scar tissue takes a long time. And it usually, you don't want to begin until after everything is healed, and then you work with it. You want to let the body go through the natural process of healing first. It sounds counterintuitive because what you got to do is go back in and undo that. But really what you're doing is just realigning the fibers. But yes, definitely adhesions are what fascia can tie up in the body. It happens when there's trauma, when there's tension, when there's muscle tension, when the body, say you sit at a computer all day and your shoulders are forward, you begin to have adhesed tissue in your neck and your shoulders, just because of the way that you're using your body every day. So it doesn't have to just be an injury or surgery. It can be a repetitive action that you keep repeating over and over again. Fascia has memory, and it does what your body tells it to do. And if you're sitting with bad posture, or if you're sedentary, if you're sitting a lot on the couch and don't have good posture, the fascia will take on that posture, and your muscles and your tissues become adhesed.
Now, Janet, I'm curious, is this something that we can assume every massage therapist knows? Or if we are thinking of using a massage therapist, should we interview that massage therapist to see how much they know about this before we become a client of that particular therapist?
Well, I think most massage therapists probably belong to a professional organization and are regularly appraised of research in the field. So I believe that most therapists know about it. I don't know how many have actually studied recent therapies and recent techniques for working with fascia, because that has been upgraded quite a lot. And they may not know about that. It depends on really where they work. A lot of times therapists in a spa setting are really there to just relax and give the client a good experience, a relaxing experience, and may not necessarily be working with fascia or trying to correct any kind of issues. A person who maintains a private practice might be more knowledgeable about that. I don't know. But you can definitely ask, how well do you know about working with fascia, or do you work with fascia? What kind of techniques do you use? It wouldn't hurt to ask the question.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Lori, and then Dorothy.
All right. Thank you, Bob and Sharon and everybody that's contributing. I am okay. I am seeing a therapist and I went to her for fascial therapy. But she mentioned after our session that she incorporates a lot of cranial sacral. So does that have anything to do with what we're talking about? Is that a whole different modality?
Janet, I'm going to throw that to you.
It's a different modality. It works with the spinal fluid, and it's a different modality.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Dorothy?
Thank you, everybody. Very informative. I wanted to know about keloids. Does my niece has them after procedure, and that's very typical for dark-skinned people to develop keloids. Will that massage help with keloids?
Okay, you're saying keloids?
Right.
Would you
I
spell?
think it's KLE, I don't know, KLEOIDS, keloids.
KELOIDS. They're like big scars, I think.
Yeah, it's an overactive development of scar tissue that happens with dark-skinned people, and sometimes, and they can be very large. And I just wondered, will the massaging help reduce them, or is that really something it can be so overscarred? I wonder, will that massage work with that or not? Does anyone know?
I have never worked with them myself, but anything that involves the skin and a scar type issue, I would definitely seek out fascial work to work with that. And I would just want you to be aware that it's a long process. It's not going to be 1 or 2 sessions and it will be alleviated. But I would definitely have her seek out a person who can work with that. And sometimes physical therapists can do that, can work with scar tissue, and that would be more likely to be covered by insurance. I know that there are some physical therapy offices that have specialists that work specifically with scar tissue issues. So that might be the first place to look, so that you could have multiple sessions and not take a big financial hit from it.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that when I had some abdominal surgery, I was afraid of developing keloids. So as soon as it healed, I massaged the scar for a year. And so that to make sure the keloid did not develop. And it's very smooth there, and doctors were impressed at the healing in the scar tissue. But I did that every day religiously for a year.
Hey, well, Dorothy, it sounds like you're pretty tuned into how this all works, just intuitively. That's
No,
great.
somebody must have suggested it. Didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. Thanks.
Okay, back to Lori and then John.
I had some surgery, shoulder surgery, actually 5 years ago, and scar tissue ended up building on it after I'd done all the therapy and everything. And then I went to somebody who did scraping. And I don't know how that is with what we're talking about. It actually helped, to tell you the truth, but it was painful, very painful. It was a very different.
Yeah, yeah. Who was the practitioner? Was it a doctor that you went to, or who did it?
It wasn't a doctor, but it was a licensed person. I think, I don't even know what the credentials were. He dealt a lot with athletes, and my personal trainer had referred me to him.
Okay.
So I'm describing some odd things, aren't I?
Well, it worked, but the pain part, sometimes that can cause issues in other parts of your body because your muscles are going out against something that's painful, and it might be affecting you somewhere else in your body. So that's as a massage therapist, that's my only issue with something as rigorous as scraping. But if it worked,
Well, I'm a licensed esthetician, and you're talking about skincare as well. So you're influencing not only the fascia, but the skin tissues and all the complicated parts of that with scraping. And same with keloids, you know, you wouldn't want to be aggressive because it is part of the skin. So yeah, I'd be careful about that, but I'm glad that it worked for you.
Well, I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, I want a gentler, softer way, but I need to be more informed. And this is very helpful to me because, you know, when you're in the personal training environment, a lot of times it's no pain, no gain, right? It's
Yeah,
just, there's a mentality. So I gutted it out and I did get relief, but I don't think I want to do that again. So this is very helpful. Thank you.
Especially when there's another way.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And there is. So thank you.
John Hoops.
You know, I would also like to share that I think it's very important, and I know for myself, I've tried different massage therapists and different physical therapists, and you get to know a feeling, a relationship with them is what I guess I want to say. And I now have a physical therapist and a massage therapist that are very kind, spiritual people. And I have great conversations with them. And I really appreciate that. And I tell my physical therapist, they keep me there for an hour. I don't feel rushed. I don't feel like a number. I don't feel like they're looking at the clock and typing on the computer the whole time. They're hands-on. He's just the most competent, pleasant, probably 30 years old. And I really value the conversations, and I thank him profusely after every session. And my massage therapist is the same way. And I just think that's really important, that you feel valued and that you're getting this communication with your therapist is really important, I think. And I know he appreciates it. And I feel I'm getting the best bang for the buck. And that physical therapy is, I'm on Medicare. It's just a $20 copay when I go in. So it's really quite reasonable. So I think that was a good comment that was made earlier. And my last comment, Bob, and I wrote in my notes the first meeting and I didn't ask it. I'm really curious about your moment with Jesus when you had that calling in the morning. Could you describe that a little more? How that took place, or I just wanted to hear more about that.
Well, I thank you for the question. I expected it to come from Vince. And I was prepared for this. Yeah, it's something that obviously I don't discuss with many people. But I felt pretty safe with this group to not only mention it, but to be able to explore it. Because when it first happened, I have to say that somebody might ask me, well, how do you know that was Jesus? What did he look like? And I have to say that I can't describe that because it was an energy. It was nothing more than an energy that identified itself to me as Jesus. But he didn't say, hey, I'm Jesus, and here's what I have to say. So it was an energy that just identified itself as Jesus. And in the discussion about communion, I hadn't talked to anybody but my wife, Amy, about my issues with communion at the time. And for this energetic entity to say, when you take communion, it's not really about my blood or my body, it's about my energy. And it's about accepting my energy and then taking that in and sharing that energy. So I can't imagine any other entity being able to tell me that communion is about taking his body or his blood than Jesus. So it confirmed for me, yep, this is Jesus. And in talking to me about the fact that I don't know how much power I have, and then delivering a huge jolt of energy to my body at that point. And as I mentioned the first time, since I had just gotten to level 2 Reiki, that I saw that as a second attunement to Reiki 2. And ever since that point, when I have a Reiki client, the energy that comes from my hands is much stronger than it was prior to that moment. And I do have a couple clients who I did prior to that point and after that point, and they've noticed the difference. So I guess that's all I can do to describe that, John. Unless you have another question about it.
No, thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Vince, did you have a follow-up question to that?
No, but I have some other things, but I think it's better to let's go let Nancy Lee go next, and then I think Sharon. So I think
Okay.
the comments from the group are really the more important things right now.
Okay, Nancy, you're up.
Thank you for this presentation. It's fascinating. And the last one, and I've been doing a lot of the things you've talked about, But I love the part about Jesus and about the communion because I had the same thoughts. And you completely changed my mind about the whole feeling. And thank you for that also.
I
Oh,
will,
you're welcome, Nancy. I will say that ever since that point, I've been taking communion. I wouldn't dare not.
I can say, just in addition, Barbara Marx Hubbard, the good Jewish girl, would take communion because for her it was simply a movement into the higher energy. So she was really not affiliated with a church, but it was symbolic of moving to higher energy. So very much was what Jesus said, very much so.
Sharon, you had a comment?
Actually, it's Janet. I had the
Janet.
comment. She didn't know how to put my name up there. But I just wanted to say, when you said, if somebody asked you, well, how did you know it was Jesus? It just reminded me of people who've had near-death experiences often report that they were greeted by their loved ones when they passed over. And I always thought, well, we don't have bodies when we're in spirit. How do they know it's their loved ones? And then I heard from different people that I've studied with, different spiritual classes and such, that we recognize each other by our energies. We each have a unique footprint, so to speak, and that's how we know who's who when we're in spirit. It's because we recognize each other's energy. So I'm just saying that that's what that reminded me of hearing.
Well,
that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Janet, because I've recently run into that same concept of an energetic fingerprint, if you will, that there's an energetic signature that each of us have, and that's actually what we recognize when we incarnate, and we suddenly run into somebody who we feel like we've known them all our lives.
Yep.
And even though it's the first time we've physically met them, and it's a recognition of that energetic signature.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, other comments? Vince?
Thank you, Bob. A few things I think would be interesting for us. First of all, I looked up the etymology of the word collagen, which is the basic protein in our fascia, and it was pretty interesting. It comes from two Greek words, which simply means generating glue. Generating glue. And if you boil down collagen, you get a glue or a very gum-like substance. So just interesting for those things. But the two things I felt were important for us to bring up. I understand the importance of healing with fascia, but I also feel there are two other very important things, and that is that our normal everyday yogic exercises, I think, are very important. I'm very content with the energization exercises of Paramahansa Yogananda, and I've been doing them for, 25, 30 years on a daily basis. So I would just want to, as I was going through some of this programming here, I was thinking about the tension and release of Paramahansa Yogananda, his program, and I just find these things very, very similar. So that I think it's very important to look at the positive yogic practices that you have. I think that's extremely important. The second thing I think is very important is to look at the Jim South material on Mastering Alchemy, where we can bring in higher light that has an impact upon the electromagnetic energies of our fascia. So I think it's very important for us to look at the positive growth items. I know there's a tendency to kind of focus a little more on the pain, the difficulty that we have all had. And thank God, we have programs that can do that. I just want to put a plug in for the more positive things we're doing as well, doing your regular daily, hopefully, energization practices. And in addition to that, bringing in higher light energy that would also maximize not only your neurological system, but also the fascia system as well. Particularly when you find that fascia is very much related to the meridian system, that the meridian system, according to Bonnie, but just the way that I see it, the meridian system really delivers the electromagnetic energy to the fascia fibrils, which enable them to impact upon the tissues, organs, bones, etc. So I find that the delivery system of light is really important through the neurological and meridian systems that we have as well. So I'm just putting in the plug for, let's do our daily work. And the more we do our daily work, I think the better we will be. Putting in a plug for that. Those are just comments I wanted to make, Bob.
Right. We have just a few minutes left. Are there any other comments or questions? Renee?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vince. I was just wanted to add one thing to my, people were asking how would you look for a therapist, maybe a massage or whoever to help you. From what I've studied from both people in the science and then spirituality, that your presence makes the most difference. It's your presence you bring to whoever you're trying to help or work. And so the more presence you can bring, and your focus intent is to, if it's to work on their fascia, that you put your total mind into their fascia, but to keep that presence. That's something that was striking for me, but seems to resonate with everyone here. But thank you. And thank you, Bob, so much.
Thank you, Renee. I need to ask Janet how much we owe her for being with us.
Oh, I just have really enjoyed everyone here and all of the comments that have been made. It's very enlightening, and I'm glad that people are becoming aware of fascia and how amazing it is. And it's going to be even more so in the coming years, I think, when we discover more and more about it.
Yeah. Okay, Vince, you had a comment?
I do, but let me defer to Karen first. If we have time, then I'll make a comment as well.
This is a quick comment that piggybacks on Renee's comment that since we've worked with light and healing in our meditations and with Jim's self, actually, when I get a massage now, I prefer the massage therapist not talk, because I am actually focusing and thinking about healing light going to the area that is being worked on. I actually do that now, that I never would have thought to do that before.
Okay. Okay, Vince.
Good point, Karen. I think that's very important for us. Just a point that Janet made, I think it was good. When it says fascia has memory, let's remember it has good memory as well. There's just a tendency to think, oh, pain, ache, this, that. It's what we do wrong. I just think it's very important to understand it has good memory of what we're doing right. So again, I just encourage you. I believe that our spiritual expansion is to be much more into a light-bearing being, And while we certainly have to correct some of the difficulties we've had to contend with, and we know we have our aches and pains and stuff, let us especially, if you listen to this morning's Sunday service, the real movement is not so much meeting the challenges of the past as it is expanding into the light of the future. So while it's very important for us to know things like fascia, let's remember that it has good memory too. That's pretty important to keep in mind. I think that's a very, very, very strong point for us. We're looking to expand, not to keep cleaning up.
Good point, good point. Okay, if there is no other comment, question, then Vince, I'll turn this over to you for the last 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, let me just take a moment to thank also Sharon and Janet for sharing the evening with us. Thank you very much. Always lovely to have you. And please feel very comfortable anytime to join us, that's for sure. And I want to thank you again, Bob, too, for your enthusiasm. And I think like anything, when Renee was talking about presence generates enthusiasm. And I think, Bob, your presence has really generated a lot of enthusiasm. And now, Lois, your presence tonight generated a lot of enthusiasm as well. When we are present to each other with excitement and enthusiasm, you know, we really understand that that's the light coming into all of us. So let me thank you, Bob. And I think we can just kind of nicely say our final conclusion here this evening. And after we make our conclusion, let me end the recording and then we can just kind of greet each other. I am an eternal being of light and love. Thus, only good can come to me and only good can come from me. We are eternal beings of light and love. Thus, only good can come to us and only good can come from us. Namaste.